Under a blood-red sunset, where the shadowy hills of Los Angeles cradle secrets never meant to be told, Vincent Price's house looms like a colossal ghost. Once belonging to the king of horror films, this place is not merely a mansion. It is a living, breathing entity with windows as dark as the devil's eyes, staring down anyone who dares cross its rusted iron gates. Locals call it by a name soaked in dread, the Demon Palace. Whispers echo in the darkness, saying that since Price left this world, the house has kept hold of his soul, and something far worse, trapped within its icy walls. Years have passed, and the garden around the house is swallowed in weeds, as though the very earth is trying to strangle the memory of its once glorious days. The gate creaks whenever the night wind stirs, sounding like the hoarse laugh of someone who knows truths best left buried. People avoid the place, even in daylight, because sunlight itself seems unable to pierce the shadows clinging to every brick. Then came Tom and Maggie Prescott, a young, naive couple with a dream to transform this Gothic ruin into a masterpiece. They scoffed at the neighbors' warnings, the stories of figures gliding through hallways at midnight, or the crying that echoed from the basement. "Ghosts don't pay the bills," Tom joked, his voice breaking the silence, though Maggie's eyes flickered with unease as she looked up at the windows, where light seemed to vanish into nothingness. From the very first night, the house began to whisper. Heavy doors creaked open on their own, groaning like lungs taking breath. Footsteps echoed down empty halls, slow and deliberate, as if something lurked in the darkness. Maggie felt a strange chill, not from the air but from deep within her bones, every time she passed the hidden corners of the house. Tom dismissed it as the wind slipping through cracks, but even he couldn't explain why their shadows on the walls sometimes stretched longer, twisted oddly, like they belonged to something not entirely human. Then, one fateful afternoon, as Maggie rummaged through the dust-laden library, she found it, a journal, hidden in a wall nook as if the house itself had led her there. The journal was bound in cracked leather, reeking of mold and decay. The pages trembled under Maggie's fingers as though alive. The handwriting, Vincent Price's, was sharp, rushed, and haunted. It spoke of a terrifying truth. "This house is no longer mine." One line read, the ink smudged like dried blood. "Something is here watching, waiting. It hides within the walls, mocking my performances. I'm no master. I am its prisoner." Each page was a confession, a plea, as Price described the house like a predator, feeding on the very fear his films had sown. He believed it lived, hungered, and had chosen him as its prey. The final line, scrawled in panic, cut off midway, "The mirrors, they are." Maggie shut the journal, her heart pounding, but the house around her seemed to have heard. A cold wind swept through, carrying a soft chuckle, as if the very walls whispered, "Now you know." Under the flickering light of wavering candles, Vincent Price's house began to reveal its true nature, like a monstrous creature slowly opening its eyes in the darkness. Maggie and Tom Prescott, the foolish ones who had stepped across the line between reality and nightmare, were now caught in a whirlpool of ceaseless whispers. With each passing night, the house grew more alive, as if it had caught the scent of their fear. The doors no longer merely groaned, they howled, flying open at midnight to reveal dark corridors that led to places light dared not touch. The footsteps became clearer, heavier, as though an invisible figure was silently trailing them, waiting for the moment they would falter. Maggie, with Price's journal etched firmly into her mind, began to notice the signs Tom persistently denied. The mirrors in the house, from the large one above the fireplace to the tiny shards in the bathroom, no longer reflected the truth. One night, as Maggie stood before the mirror in the bedroom, she saw her reflection, lagging behind as if it had a will of its own. The eyes in the mirror seemed darker, deeper, and when she turned away, she swore she heard a faint laugh echoing from behind the glass. "There's something wrong with the mirrors," she whispered to Tom, her voice trembling, but he merely shrugged, dismissing it as the imagination of a weary mind. Still, even Tom couldn't deny the bone-deep chill he felt when his hand brushed against the surface of the hallway mirror. It wasn't the cold of glass, but the breath of death itself. Then one night, as a storm howled outside, growling like it meant to tear the sky apart, Tom's skepticism shattered. Maggie woke to find him missing from their bed. Following the sleepwalking footsteps, she made her way down to the basement, a place they both avoided due to its unnatural cold and the stench of decay like grave dirt. There, beneath the dim beam of a flashlight, she found Tom standing before a massive mirror, long forgotten in the shadows. Its surface wasn't flat, but rippling like a pool of black water, and in it appeared the image of Vincent Price. His eyes rolled white, his mouth twisted in a silent scream. Surrounding him were dozens of faces crowded together, trapped souls, their eyes wide, their mouths silently begging for release. Tom, as if entranced, reached toward the mirror, his fingers mere inches from its surface. Maggie screamed, rushing to pull him back, but the mirror's pull was so strong she felt herself being dragged in two. In a panic, she grabbed an old candelabrum and smashed it into the glass. The mirror shattered, shards raining down like silver rain, and a terrible shriek rang out, as though the house itself was howling in agony. The nightmare seemed to end, but it was only the beginning. The next morning, Maggie and Tom hurriedly fled the house, determined to leave it all behind. They packed their belongings into the car, their breaths still trembling from what they had witnessed. As the car wound down the twisting roads of the hills, Maggie glanced into the rearview mirror, and her blood froze. In the back seat sat Vincent Price, his eyes gleaming with a cruel smile. "You'll never escape," he whispered, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. Maggie screamed. Tom lost control. The car veered off the road, the horn blaring a mournful note that echoed through the hills. When neighbors arrived at the scene, the car was empty. Not a trace of Maggie or Tom remained, only the shattered pieces of the rearview mirror, glinting under the sunlight as if mocking them. From that day on, their disappearance became legend, woven into the dark myth of the Demon Palace, where no soul ever truly finds rest. The darkness of the Demon Palace never truly vanished, no matter how the sunlight tried to pierce through the dense canopy on the hills of Los Angeles. The house stood there, silent yet defiant, like a sleeping beast waiting for its next prey to cross the threshold. After the mysterious disappearance of the Prescott couple, whispers about the house only grew more terrifying, drawing in the curious and the reckless. But no one ever stayed long, for every step inside the house felt watched, by invisible eyes hiding behind broken mirrors and in shadowy corners. And then came Emily Grant, a historian haunted by the mysteries of old Hollywood. To her, Vincent Price's house wasn't just a ghost story. It was a doorway into a dark past where the truth still waited to be unearthed. Beneath a starless sky, Emily stepped through the rusted iron gate, armed with a Polaroid camera, a voice recorder, and Vincent Price's journal, the only surviving relic from the days he was imprisoned by the house itself. The moment her foot touched the dusty hallway, the air thickened, heavy with mold and something sharper, like dried blood. The walls moaned, the floorboards creaked like breaking bones, and the mirrors, now cracked and stained like the decaying skin of a corpse, seemed to breathe. They reflected not Emily's image, but distorted versions of the room, stretching shadows into grotesque forms, as if the house was painting its own nightmare. Her camera refused to work, unless she aimed it at the mirrors. Each flash of white light tore through the dark, but the photos revealed what the naked eye could not. Figures standing behind her, faces peeking from corners, and in one image, Vincent Price himself, his eyes inches from hers as though whispering through the veil of death. Emily's courage wavered, but Price's journal urged her deeper. A shrill hum of static led her down into the basement, where Maggie and Tom had once faced the cursed mirror. There, among the shattered remains of the glass, she found a silver key, glinting under her flashlight as if it had been waiting for her. Her hands trembled as she discovered a hidden door. Its charred wood looked scorched by fire, the lock pulsing like the heartbeat of a living thing. Though her instincts screamed to run, Emily inserted the key. The door opened with a ghostly sigh, revealing a spiral staircase descending into endless black. The air was knife cold, slicing against her skin, but she stepped down, each footfall pulling her further from reality. At the bottom was a hallway that seemed to stretch forever, lined with mirrors on either side. But they didn't reflect her. Instead, they showed trapped souls, some crying, some screaming, others frozen in silent terror. The final mirror glowed brightly, drawing her like a moth to flame. Within it, Vincent Price sat at a desk, his pen moving frantically across paper. Suddenly he looked up, his piercing eyes locking with hers. "You shouldn't be here," his voice echoed as though coming from the walls themselves. The mirrors shuddered violently, the hallway filling with screeching, and then the darkness swallowed everything. Amid the chaos, one voice rang clearer than the rest: "Break the cycle." Emily turned, heart pounding, but the hallway was endless now, the mirrors stretching infinitely, faces beginning to rise from within them, whispering her name. Then she felt something in her pocket, a shard of broken glass, a remnant from the basement mirror. With desperate resolve, she plunged it into the brightest mirror. Its surface warped like water, pulling her through into a space beyond naming. The walls were lined with massive reels of film, spinning silently, projecting scenes from Price's old films, but they were wrong, twisted. The actors screamed in agony, their eyes rolled back in their skulls. Price emerged, half his body swallowed by shadow. "You've crossed the threshold," he said, his voice trembling. "This house isn't just haunted, it's a prison built on cursed land. Every soul trapped here feeds it. I became the gatekeeper, forced to lure others into its web." He pointed to the reels. "Destroy them and you'll free us. But beware, it will fight back." Emily approached the nearest reel, her hand burning as she touched it. As she tore it apart, a scream shattered the silence, the house shaking like a wounded beast. The mirrors darkened, hands clawed out from them, talons slashing the air, trying to drag her back. Price screamed, his voice nearly drowned, "Hurry!" But as she reached the largest reel, the heart of the house, a figure emerged from the mirror, identical to her, smiling coldly like a blade. "Are you sure you're the real one?" it whispered. And in that moment, Emily felt reality crack. The mirrors showed dozens of her, crying, begging, or staring with lifeless eyes. The floor split open, revealing an abyss below, and from it, a massive faceless shadow rose, whispering, "You are the final chapter. The story ends with you." With her last ounce of strength, Emily plunged the shard into the massive reel. A deafening explosion rocked the house. The film reels crumbled into ash, the mirrors shattered, and the darkness receded like a tide. Silence fell. The air lightened, as if the house had exhaled its final breath. In the last remaining shard she saw Vincent Price. He nodded, his face a mixture of sorrow and peace. Emily ran, her footsteps echoing as the front door swung open, revealing the world outside. She stepped out beneath the cold night sky, her breath turning to mist, but deep inside she knew the house was still waiting, hidden in shadow, ready to write its next story with the next soul who dared to enter.